let's just go ahead and get this over with, shall we?
Welcome to Courage and the Constitution. I'm just a guy digging behind the headlines to get to the nuggets of truth. I'm tired of the rhetoric and the propaganda. I'm being lied to by the media. I just want to know what's going on in the world. So let's do this.
Thank you for watching this video you're about to see. I'm releasing it in full, but I'm going to release it in parts. I'll introduce each section here just because of length of time, so it's easier to consume. But it is so important. If you are a firearm, or if you believe in the right to self-protection and that you don't need to rely on the government to take care of you, because the government can't, this is important for you to know, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's not me using hyperbole, it's not me trying to fearmonger, and it's not me exaggerating anything. It is literally, in the words of this bill, from this congresswoman from Texas, to disarm you and to leave you disenfranchised, and to do so without abolishing the Second Amendment. I'm going to break it down piece by piece. Bear with the video, because you are going to learn a lot. I, as a Second Amendment advocate, am more than happy to break this down for you. I want you to know this information. Please pass it on. Let other people know. We need to make people aware of what this administration and those who are friendly with it are really trying to do. And if somebody ever tells you they're not trying to take your guns, absolutely disregard it. Because I'm telling you, it's not an opinion. They literally are wrong. 100% wrong. Out of sheer ignorance. So, thank you. Let's go ahead. This is the full video right now. And then I'll introduce sections 1, 2, and 3 in shorter video snippets after this. But thanks for watching. Enjoy. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for subscribing. For those of you who have, I ask that you please like, share, and subscribe. That's what helps us grow the channel, get our voice out, try to reach more people. Hopefully, maybe even rescue a few. Grow our side. Do what we can to preserve sanity. Anyway, I brought you a video a little bit ago introducing you Sheila Jackson Lee, a congresswoman out of Texas, Houston area, I believe, and her bill HR127. I'm going to get to that in a moment. I make you videos on lots of different things as I research, really try to understand them, to give you a commentary around it, to really try to bring it maybe from a different angle or in a way that you haven't heard before, or in a voice that you haven't heard. One thing about me is I am very much a Second Amendment advocate. That's kind of my wheelhouse. I love the Second Amendment community, the gun community. I love the guns. Not a violent person. Don't go out and do things crazy. In fact, the multiple millions of people, including the 5 million people who just became new firearms just last year with the scare of COVID and the riots and that type of stuff through BLM and Antifa and all those kind of things that occurred. There are millions of people who own guns, and they're wonderful people. It's a great community. If you've ever gone shooting or if you go to a range or whatnot, the mix and diversity of people and the conversations and the sharing of things back and forth, it is an excellent community. Very much a fan of it, very much an advocate for it. And of course, even beyond that, it's not just about the guns and toys and having fun, but it's about the right of self-protection and all those different things that go under. I've talked about those in other videos. I'm not going to go into that much here. Looking today at HR127, the bill put out by Sheila Jackson Lee. First of all, before we get into it, can they actually pass this bill? Well, there's been a lot of bills that have been put through over time, especially even before the 94 Clinton assault weapon ban, that have gone through, and they've gotten squelched. They've, gotten pushed out. They've, sometimes they'll put out a bill to try to get a few things, knowing they may not get it all, but a bill gives a very good intention of what they really want. One thing to keep in mind is that now the Democrats hold the Senate, the Democrats hold the House, and they're in presidency, and we know because of the committee they're putting together, the Biden-Harris administration, looking at reform of the Supreme Court. I'll leave it to you to think about what that means. So what does that mean in regard to gun rights and Second Amendment? It means they get the best shot ever that they have had of pushing through what they want. And if you are a gun rights person, if you are somebody who owns a firearm, I don't care if you're somebody who owns your grandfather's old shotgun, this will affect you, and you need to pay attention. You have to remember, they've got people like Beto O'Rourke on their side. The one who came out and said, hell yeah, we're going to take your guns. So keep that in mind. I made a video once that talked about whether or not they can actually remove our rights to bear arms without actually taking away our rights to bear arms. Can they keep us from bearing arms? Can they keep us from owning guns without actually abolishing the Second Amendment? The answer to that easily is yes, they can. This bill I'm going to break down for you here is an great example of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break that bill down for you. I'm going to looking over here on my screen where I have it pulled up from Congress right here. And I'm going to read it, break it down, explain it to you as we go. I'm going to try to be somewhat brief because there's a lot of bullet points to hit. And I don't want this to be too long. I have a feeling it's going to get kind of long. So just bear with me. Please bear with me. This is for all of us. And then I'm also going to keep, there's some very big, and I mean big, financial implications in regard to this that you don't even see coming unless you've actually gone through and read this bill. I'm going to keep a tally on the screen here or somewhere, wherever I do it after I get done recording this, of what this is going to cost you as a gun owner. Oh, and if you are a gun owner already, yeah, it's going to cost you. Oh, and what if you have just an old Civil War relic that's defunct, that just hangs on your wall as decoration? Yeah, it's going to cost you, and in ways that you never imagined it could. That's not hyperbole. It's literally in the bill, and I'm going to break it down. So you see, I understand that when it comes to the Second Amendment, there's a lot of opinion around it. But a lot of that opinion, especially from the side of the squeaky wheel, is driven by bias, ignorance, and by those who just, they don't know how to read the greater context and of the life and time of those, the founding fathers who wrote the bill at the time that they were putting together the Constitution and drafting it. In fact, there's more than one draft of the Second Amendment. We'll get into that toward the end. But just as in reading and understanding the Bible, for example, using what's called exegesis, really understanding the scripture in its context to know what it's really saying, rather than trying to read it in our context, which skews what's really being said at the time that they put it in there. It's the same thing. Consider exegesis of reading the Second Amendment. Instead of trying to understand through our day and life today. And you have to understand, in fact, let me read the Second Amendment to you really quick. I always keep a copy of the Constitution around me here. I mean, the channel title is called Courage and Constitution, right? Makes sense. So the Second Amendment says this: a well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. I understand when you're reading that, those commas are very, very important because, in fact, I'm going to pause on that. I'll come more to that in the end. But what I want to do is ask you a quick question here. So where it says a well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, do you think that security of a free state is just talking about the British at that time when they were coming over to, when we had to begin fighting them off and all that? Consider that. Now, I'm going to go to the screen real quick here. There's an oath of office people take, whether they're going into, governor, mayor, president, whatever. There's an oath of office they take. There's going to be 2 points there. First of all, the oath of office, and it's sometimes worded a little bit differently, but it's the same message. It basically says this, and this is the U.S. Senate oath to office, okay? It says, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, right? That I will bear true faith and allegiance. What does that word mean? Allegiance. Do you go into a marriage? And I understand there's a lot of people there's a lot of things that have gone on in marriages, divorces and that. And I'm not trying, this isn't a shame thing, but the whole point is, do you go into a marriage and you give an oath, your allegiance, with the intention that you're going to break it? Things happen down the road, and I get that. But do you do that? No, because there's an allegiance, there's an oath, there's a fidelity, there's a promise. That's what this is, okay? They bear allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will, and then it kind of goes on from there. But there's something very important here when it talks about defend the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Think about what that means, because I'm going to touch on that at the end. Instead, I'm going to try to give a couple fairly brief commentary. But then you can also Google something like, okay, so they say that, great, do they really mean it? Well, go in and do an internet search of whether or not the oath of office is legally binding. And you find this right here from the government website. It says, the official reciting of the oath swears an allegiance to uphold the Constitution. Not abolish it, is what the left is trying to do. Many of them who have come out and say we need to abolish the Constitution in order to put in a new document. Okay, so swears allegiance to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution only specifies an oath to office for the president. However, Article 6 of the Constitution states that other officials, including members of Congress, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. So is that oath of office legally binding? The quick answer to that is yes. Yes, it is. Okay. So with all that, let's go ahead and I'm going to turn my attention over here to the bill, HR 127. And I'm just going to try to hit some of these bullet points here. The actual title of it is HR 127, Sabika Sheikh Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. A lot of these bills, what they do is they try to couch it in something that brings in a lot of emotion in order to garner, like Safe Streets Act or whatever, in order to garner support without even knowing what's really in it. Because if you say, well, I don't support the Safe Street Act, they can say, why didn't you support safe streets? You're a tyrant, you're awful. Well, in this particular one, Sabika Sheikh, she happened to be somebody, there was I want to say it was Santa Fe, but there was a shooting in a school, and she was killed in that shooting. Unfortunate, terrible, no excuse for it. Terrible. But they named the bill after her. Is it just to put her name on a plaque to honor her? No. When they do these bills, they are very intentional that they use ways to try to garner that support, build that emotion, which the left does, right? Remember, a lot of what the left does, like we've seen all year, is they are more about that emotional reaction rather than... Sorry, I had a phone call there. I had to stop it because it killed my camera. But that emotional reaction rather than critical thought. So that's why they couch it in that. But she was a Pakistani exchange student. She was killed, and very unfortunate. But that's why they named the bill that after there. So basically, the short title gives it there. And then it starts breaking down section 1, section 2, and all that. So first of all, this is section 2 of the bill. Licensing of firearm and ammunition possession, registration of firearms. So part A, firearm licensing and registration system in general, chapter 44, title 18, United States Code. We're not going to go into all that. The Attorney General, through the Bureau of Alcohol, ATF, shall establish a system for licensing the possession of firearms ammunition in the United States, and for the registration with the Bureau of each firearm present in the United States. Basically, that you need to have a license, which we'll get into why that's important later. We do have licenses already to carry firearms. Now it's a license to own a firearm, literally in your home, a license for that firearm. And you have to understand where it says here, registration with the Bureau for a license for each firearm present in the United States. Keep in mind, those licenses are not also free, okay? And we don't know what all the fees to a lot of these are at this point, but for the ones that do, we're going to at least I'll try to keep a tally of it, if I can remember to do so. So the licensing of firearms and ammunition as well. Yes, you do have to have a license to own ammunition as well as purchase it. Keep in mind, these random rounds I have up here representing different calibers, every single one would need a license. But let's go on, okay? Required information. Under the firearm registration system, the owner of a firearm shall transmit to the Bureau the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, the identity of the owner of the firearm, the date the firearm was acquired by the owner, and where the firearm is or will be stored. Think about that. Why do they need to know that? Why does anybody need to know all that information about your firearm? Rather than just, you have a license to own a firearm, great. They want to know every single little bit of information about your firearm, including where it is stored. Remember, this is all couched in the idea of common sense gun law and safety, just general safety. They need to know where your gun is stored? Really? Let's go on. And a notice specifying the identity of any person whom, at any period of time during which the firearm will be loaned in to the person. Let's keep going. And then the next section is the database. Keep this in mind. In general, the Attorney General shall establish and maintain a database of all firearm registered pursuant to this subsection. That is a registry. For everybody who has told me they're not trying to do a confiscation or registry or all of that, it literally says it right here. So these crimes that have been committed are a gun registry, and the background check would not have prevented it. Would not have. Why? Because they passed the background checks for the ones that got the guns legitimately. But remember, there are others who stole the weapons, right? They acquired them from elsewhere and then used them in what they were doing. And you have to remember, by far, the majority of the crime that's committed is done in urban city areas by guns that are stolen or bought off the black market. That's just the truth. That's a fact. I've said that many times, and I broke it down, that particular section of the Biden-Harris gun plan. This right here will do zero to curb that. Zero to curb it. Okay? This is going after legal, legitimate, responsible gun owners. And guess what? Legal, legitimate, responsible gun owners are not the ones going out and committing crime. Which means there's another reason, really, behind all this. So, right here, they said they have to have a registry. So you have to have a license to possess a firearm and ammunition. 21 years of age. It goes over some of the details. After applying for the license, here, keep in mind, then you have to apply for the license for firearm per firearm and ammunition. After you do the license, in order to apply for it, you have to fulfill some criteria. You have to check some boxes. One of them, you undergo a criminal background check conducted by the National Instant Criminal That's the NICS system. That's already what is done when you go to purchase a firearm in a gun shop. Anybody with an FFL, Federal Firearms License, for example. But what this does do is they're trying to disallow private ownership of items you own, things that belong to you, possessions of yours. Like in Georgia right now, I can take a gun I own, I can meet somebody, as long as they're in Georgia, and we're both Georgia residents, and we can do the transaction, okay? So that's completely illegal, all right? And that's also not how the guns are required, because people don't want to be tagged to things. That's not how the guns are required for people who go out and do the crime, mind you, okay? So you can't compare the one to the other, because one does not equate the other, because it does, there's no correlation between the two. It doesn't happen. Okay, so that's the first part. So the NICS system, right? Keep in mind, this is the part I bet you were not expecting. Every single individual who owns a firearm or is going to purchase a firearm, every firearm you purchase, keep in mind, undergoes a psychological evaluation conducted in accordance with paragraph 2. So then you have to have a psych eval. I went on to Google just to do a quick internet search of cost of psychological evaluation. It looks like here, so let's just say $134, for each gun. And each time you purchase a gun, let's just keep watching. Let's keep going here. Undergoes criminal background check, psychological evaluation, successfully completes a training course certified by the Attorney General, that would be the government, in the use, safety, and storage of firearms. That includes at least 24 hours of firearm training. And those costs can vary, but okay, so here's a course for a couple hours at $125. $125 for a couple hours. They want you to have 24 hours of training. I'm not going to do the math right now. It's probably already up on the screen, in post here. So, okay, so that's we'll take a look at that there. Keep that in the back of your mind. So, training and demonstrates that on issuance of the license, the individual will have, in effect, an insurance policy issued. So then you also have to buy an insurance policy. And they're not terrible. So let's go USCCA, just to pick one. Now, this is probably going to be a government-issued insurance policy. Keep that in mind, not private, okay? Because they're keeping control over everything. So USCCA insurance membership, $347 a year. So we're going to add $347 to that per year. Per year, that's annual. Okay? And demonstrates it on issue. Okay, here's the second part. Section B. So this was all parts under Section A. Now we're under Section B. Antique firearms display license. Do you own an antique firearm? Are you one of those people that have like a lodge style home and you have a couple old guns, even if they don't work? Even if it's an old flintlock type guns or muskets or something like that, guess what? You have to have an antique firearms display license. That's not even a thing yet, but it will be. And if it is, I just don't know about it. But at least it's definitely going to be. So you're going to have to carry a license for that. I don't know what the cost of it. You know what? Let's just find out really quick. Let's just see if it's a thing. Okay. It is in the UK and Ireland. So I really don't have anything against it to give you a cost, but it is a license. So guarantee you, especially with a whole lot less revenue coming in on tax dollars, that's going to be, look for my video on taxes. These all play in together because these are all different parts of the same big scheme here. So military, so yeah, antique firearms display license. All right, you have to have a license for that. Let's go on. That you are the holder of the license. Let's see. The Attorney General will issue an individual license to display one antique firearm in a residence of the individual. One, if the individual is the license holder, under the subparagraph, supplies proof that the individual owns an antique firearm, and describes the manner in which the firearm will be displayed in accordance with regulations prescribed by the Attorney General, so where the firearm is displayed. You literally have to tell them exactly, why do they need to know where you store your antique guns or where you display them? How many crimes do we see going out where people are taking pre-Civil War era muskets or M1 Grands from the World War II, going out and committing crimes with them? You want to know how many? 0. This is not about gun safety. It has nothing to do with safety. You need to get that in your head. That is so important to understand, okay? It is so important. It has nothing to do with safety. But let's go on. Okay? It describes the manner in which it's going to be displayed, where it's going to be displayed, and how it's going to be displayed. The government wants to know that. Remember in the Constitution, the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. Let's go on. Demonstrates that the individual has provided storage of the firearm safe in a safe facility approved by Attorney General for storage of firearms. Okay, so you're going to display it, but it also has to be in a storage. You see what they do? You see the game they play? You can say it. You have to tell us how they're stored or how you're displaying it. What's it looking like? Oh, and you have to store it in a safe. Do you think one overrides the other? Okay. Military style weapon license. Do you know what that means? Let me show you. And it doesn't stop there. If you're paying attention or you watch my videos and you're watching the games they play, I'm breaking down for you exactly what they are really saying. Military style firearm. At least they're honest with it. They try to say that these are military weapons or military grade weapons, an AR-15. Guess what? They are not. I'm not going to break it down. I explained it in other videos. This is not what the military use, but it's the military style. So guess what? This is going to get extra attention thanks to good old Sheila Jackson Lee, who literally in her video, watch the first video I did, she talks about how this thing weighs more than 10 moving boxes. She says this weighs more than 10 moving boxes. And it shoots 50 cal bullets. Do you know how big a 50 cal bullet is? This is a 5.56 shot in an AR-15. You see that bullet? This is just the casing. Do you see that little bullet? The size of my pinky fingernail. And I'm only about 5'7". I'm not a big dude, so it's not a big old fingernail. 50 cals are like this. Or 50 mil, rather, sorry. So yes, you need to really understand the context and have all of this background when you understand these bills. So let's see what they say about it. Attorney General shall issue an individual license to own or possess a military style weapon. That's another license. A license for this, a handgun, just for what I'm showing here, a license for this AR-15, 2, and we don't know how much those license fees are yet, so I can't really give you that. Well, you know what? Well, no, because I can only look at what a concealed carry is. That's different. These are not concealed carry. So I don't have those numbers for you. I'm sorry. But look at the other prices. They ain't going to be cheap. And a license for the ammunition. 3 different licenses so far in what I've showed you. And this is not even close to what the average is that most gun owners have in their home. Okay? Remember, safety. After applying for a license under the subparagraph, successfully completes a training course. Another training course. They want you to have another training course certified by the Attorney General in the use safe storage weapon that includes at least 24 hours of training. Whatever number I ended up putting on the screen for the first 24 hours of training, go ahead. There should be a cha-ching sound. Let's just go ahead and double it. Okay? Because now that is what they want for this, for each one. So if you own 2, most people own more than 1 who do own them. A training course and a license for each one. Are you tracking with me here? Responsible people who don't commit crimes. Is this really about safety? Really? This has nothing to do with inner city urban areas where most of the crime occurs with stolen weapons and illegally procured. Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. Let's go on. So the training, psychological evaluation, again. So we need to double that up. So let's just say psych times 2. It gets better. It gets better. And then the license, I'll need to do times 2. We're just going to assume somebody has just a pistol, just an AR. Even though we're just going to assume that. Okay. And as part of the psychological evaluation, the licensed psychologist interviews. Keep in mind, in each of these is a new cost. So we're going to have to put a check mark next to this. Interviews any spouse of the individual. So an evaluation for yourself, an evaluation for your spouse, any former spouse of the individual, right? So let's say you're divorced. You have a former spouse. This is crazy. And at least 2 other persons who are members of the family of or an association of the individual to further determine the state of mental, emotional, relational stability of the individual in relations to firearms. So that's 1 psych eval for you, plus 4 more psych evals, about 100, let's just call it $150 each. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say $700 in psych evaluations to own a gun, where millions of them are owned by millions of people, and there are not millions of shootings and crimes occurring out there. Psych evaluation for the legitimate law-abiding citizens in your country shall not be infringed. Don't forget the oath of office. Your fidelity to the Constitution, right? Don't forget that. And also remember to protect against enemies, foreign and domestic. Let's go on here. So you have the psych evaluation, right? And then you have to determine the Attorney General. It talks about all these things where it kind of breaks down. They determine, have you ever been hospitalized? Do you have a mental illness? Okay. Depression, anxiety. I've done another video on the sheer numbers of depression and anxiety and the different forms of in this country. That is considered a mental illness. That will not allow you to have a firearm. Oh, we still have the Second Amendment, right? But can they take away your rights to own arms without actually taking away the Second Amendment? Come on. So mental illness, disturbance. Disturbance? They just say disturbance. What do you do with a big open-ended term like disturbance? Disturbance or diagnosis, including, see right here, like I just said, including depression. Okay? And of course, they want to see if you have suicidal ideas and so forth. Addiction to a controlled substance, with a meaning of a controlled substance, or alcohol, or brain disease, including dementia. Now keep in mind something else about the psych eval. How many times have you heard, and it's not the official position, but it's been pushed by Congress people and just lawyers and so forth on the left, that those who voted for Trump, and especially the children of those who voted for Trump, need to go through a re-education process. So your psych eval means that you could be conservative just because you're conservative. Think about that. Think about the dangerous precedents this sets. But they're not coming after your guns. Oh, we're not turning into a socialist country. Think about that. And remember, they called Donald Trump fascist. Think about just this bill. And think about all the precedents it sets. And the little pebble it drops in the water that creates the bigger and bigger ripples. Shall not be infringed. A license itself is an infringement, but shall not be infringed. Expiration of a license. A license issued to the individual under... Okay, expiration, I get that. Okay, so a 3-year license, renew it every 3 years, whatever the cost of that is going to be. That's not abnormal in the case of concealed carry, for example. You have to do a renewal. Like every state is different in theirs. Okay. Oh, and every time you get the license, it includes another 8 hours of training. I'm not even going to worry about factoring that into the cost. You're getting it. Oh, wait. Fee, here we go. Fee specified in the paragraph. How much do you think it is? Take a guess. You see what's on the side here? This is a fee for the license. You have to have a license, remember? This is the fee. $800 per gun and ammo. But no, they're not taking away your right to bear arms. The term, okay, then it goes into military style weapons. Military style weapons, any firearm that copies, duplicates the firearms in any caliber. Did you know they use 9mm in the weapon? In fact, this right here is a Sig Sauer P320X Compact. Okay, Sig Sauer P320X Compact. The full-size Sig Sauer P320 essentially is the contracted sidearm for the military right now, which means this typical pistol is a military style weapon. You can't help but say it is. It's literally a smaller version of that which is actually used in the military. 9mm. It says right here, any firearm or copies or duplicates or the firearm in any caliber. 9mm is probably the most common caliber for firearms out there, for pistols. $800. I haven't even gotten to the taxes. So $800. So Norinco, Mitchell, Pauly, and so forth, and it goes down and breaks a bunch of things. So any military style firearm, it includes here a Colt AR-15. This is very important because they do not use AR-15s in the military. They use Colt LEO AR-15s for police. But I told you what they're doing, the game they're playing. It's not a military, but it's military style. Semi-automatic rifle that has a detachable magazine and has at least two of a folding or telescoping stock. Think about that. What does a stock that folds have to do with committing crime? It's not about that. It's not about crime. A pistol grip that protrudes beneath the action of the weapon. Let me show you something. This is the action of the weapon up here, okay? Right up here. A pistol grip protrudes. Every single gun has a pistol grip that protrudes below the action. Every single gun. Essentially, it's saying, if you're really reading it, you understand what it's saying. Every gun meets military style qualifications. Folks, I have to interrupt this piece of the video because as I'm going through edit, I realized I forgot a couple very important points on these list of items while I was recording that are putting weapons or guns on a restricted list. Remember, it is any two of these. Any two of these. One of them, of course, was a grip below the action. Action up here, pistol grip is right here. Action up here, pistol grip is right here. Literally every single gun. So that's one check already. There's one that I forgot. One is it mentions here, flash suppressor. Flash suppressor is this little bit right here, and that is a piece of every single AR that is out there. Every single AR that is out there. What does it do? It does just what it says. Flash suppresses. Does it keep from being able to see a flash? Does it make you invisible if you're shooting at night? Not at all. It just helps suppress it. So already, according to their list, each of these, military style, right? That's one check. Each of these, a grip protruding below the action, that's two checks. This one just by itself, flash suppressor, that's three checks. And then if we go down as well, beyond threaded barrel and all that, it does talk about it does mention a semi-automatic pistol that includes certain things. This is a semi-automatic pistol, right? One of the things it says just right there in section C, detachable magazine. Every single pistol. So now it's a semi-automatic pistol. Now it has a detachable magazine. Now it has a handle that protrudes below the action. Oh, now it's also a military style. Oh, but they're leaving nothing out. Do you see the game they're playing? They literally want to make sure they cover everything that ends up on the restricted list. Oh, you can have certain licenses and that kind of stuff. Oh, but at the same time it's restricted. One is going to have to supersede the other. So, the other thing that it talks about is, when it mentions barrel suppressors and so forth, I need to also bring your attention to a barrel shroud. A barrel shroud is this piece right here. Why? Because the barrel runs through it. The barrel gets hot. You can't touch it. When you've got that much material going through it so quickly, it creates so much friction that it gets hot. So it even says right here, a barrel shroud that is attached to, or partially, or completely, make sure we get them all, encircles the barrel. that permits, why is there a barrel shroud? That permits the shooter to hold the firearm with a non-trigger hand without being burned. Yes. Because you have something that keeps you from getting burned, that's also on the ban list. Oh, and then what else does it say? A manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when the pistol is unloaded. At least they give us that little bit of grace. But this little guy right here, almost 30 ounces. Almost 30 ounces, and this is a compact. Think, people. So, do you see what they are doing? For the people that say they're not trying to take your firearms, listen, I can't say it any more clear than this. They are literally trying to take your firearms. And if they can't, they are making it as impossible as they can to keep you from owning any. Oh, but we're not touching the Second Amendment, right? Let's get back to the video. A threaded barrel capable of accepting a barrel extender, flash suppressor, forward hand grip. I've done a different video on how a suppressor is not a silencer. Contrary to popular belief, does zero to inhibit crime, but they're going for it. Semi-automatic shotgun. It shall be unlawful for a person to sell or give firearm or ammunition to another person unless you notify Attorney General of the sale or gift. Basically, grandfather dies, you inherit his old shotgun. Government has to know about it. And by the way, part of the penalty is you're a felon if you don't. Let's get to the penalties and the punishments. Let's spank you. Whoever knowingly violates sections, all those sections, shall be fined. So, it's all about gun safety, right? Let's say you decide, oh no, I'm not going to tell the government what I have and where. Absolutely not. Here's the fine. Shall be fined not less than $75,000 and not more than $100,000. Imprisoned not less than 15 years and not more than 25 years, or both. And shall not be fined less than $100,000, $150,000. People, listen to me. Listen to me very carefully. This has nothing to do with safety. It has nothing to do with safety. There are more firearms in this country than there are people living in it. Millions upon millions of people who own firearms. There are not millions and millions of deaths out there. People own firearms to protect themselves and protect the people around them. They own firearms for sport, for fun. We go to the range. We're a community. We're safe with them. We lock them up. This has nothing to do with keeping the streets safe. It has everything to do. Oh, and they want a registry? I'm going to tell you right now. You look at every single country. If I said in a different video, every single country that instituted a registry, every single one, from 1930s Germany to Yugoslavia to Cuba to Venezuela to Australia, every single one, a registry was the step right before confiscation. But they're not coming for your guns. That is a shitload of lie right there. Anytime anybody says that to you, you disregard them if they're not going to listen to you because they know nothing. It is in writing right here. They are literally trying to disarm the people. $75,000 because somebody can't pay an $800. And who do you think that's going to disenfranchise most? Low-income areas and areas, especially more urban areas, which also happen to be a higher densely populations of color. So you're disenfranchising black people, if you want to put it that way. So you're a racist. So this law violates the Constitution and it violates civil rights. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All three of those are violated by this. Prohibition on possession of certain ammunition. This is also important. I'm not going to go much into it here because I talked about it in video number 1, which is much shorter than this. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess ammunition that is 50 caliber or greater. A Desert Eagle is 50 caliber. Smith & Wesson makes a very popular 50 caliber revolver. Never been used in a crime. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess a large capacity ammunition feeding device. That is 10, anything over 10 rounds. This would make me a felon. It's a piece of plastic. And if you own a gun, probably going to make you a felon too. Large capacity ammunition feeding device defined. Let's see what they say here. The term large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, or similar device that has the capacity of, or that can be readily restored or converted to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Violating these penalties, $50,000 fine, $100,000. We've talked about that. Knowingly violates will throw you in prison and fine. Ladies and gentlemen, they don't care about you. This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the government. You know what? I read you the bill all the way through, all the applicable parts. In their words, what they want. And they say they're not coming for your guns. Let me say something to you. Thank you for bearing with me. I know that that was long, so that's why I'm breaking it down into different parts. Unless you've watched it in full, in which case you're a trooper, and I thank you. But even if you watch it and it's 3 parts still, thank you. I really want you to know this information because I want everybody to know this information. So please, I'm asking you, like, share, subscribe. That's what really helps get this out. Okay, this is going to help us all. And it's not just myself. Look at other people as well. I would suggest people like Colion Noir if you want to know more. There's lots of gun advocates on YouTube you can watch. Iraqi Veteran 8888 is another one. Find these people. Look what they have to say as well. We are all passionate about this. We are all passionate about self-protection, about protecting our homes, our loved ones, our homes, and protecting our country, our constitutional republic against what the government is trying to do with it. So again, I just thank you for bearing with me with this. And I just have to say something now about the Second Amendment as we close this out. But again, thank you. Like, share, subscribe. The Second Amendment, you have to understand, it's there. It's a way to restrain a government, which naturally, as we're seeing now, and governments historically, just out of natural occurrence of government, over time, they get bigger, they get stronger, and they get far more overreaching with a hunger for power and more control. And that is absolutely dangerous, especially in a culture now where the younger generation has been convinced and being groomed up that socialism or some form of it is a good idea. And of course, it's awful. It's an awful idea that really does put a lot of people in a smaller box and while giving the keys of power to the elite at the top to lord it over everyone. But they've changed around definitions of what is fascism and what isn't, for example, with Trump. And people believe it. So there's a reason it says, shall not be infringed. And no, it's not just for a temporary time of when the colonials had to fight against the British because, for one, the Second Amendment would have sunset after that time. And 2, it was not a suggestion. It is an amendment written in ink and established in our Constitution and signed for. So was it really just about muskets and fighting the British? No, not at all. Not at all. Absolute period, the end. Shall not be infringed does not have a clause of sunset to it. It does not mean it should, over time, that it should be lessened and reduced. It meant, at that time, shall not be infringed. And it means it now. At this time, shall not be infringed. It is frustrating to see how people continue to try to qualify the Second Amendment or qualify that statement when there's no wording of qualification within it. It is there. It is written in ink. It is signed by the founding fathers of this nation. It says, shall not be infringed. It does not say shall not be infringed except, or shall not be infringed but, or shall not be infringed except only when. It says shall not be infringed. Period. The end. And why did they put it in there? Well, there's plenty of hints as to why when you look at everything in context. Again, it is not just about militias. In fact, if you can find an original copy of the Second Amendment, and I mean the first draft, it makes it even more clear. But Thomas Jefferson, as an example himself, said that every couple years, the government needs to, or every couple hundred years, the government needs to be purged. Why? Because they get too overreaching, too corrupt, too overbearing, and too dangerous to a constitutional republic. And in time, it is inevitable that they will grow so enormous and take away from the people any fight that they have in them or means to stand against the government in order to rule without opposition. You can look also, although it's attributed to the potential of, I think, about 3 different people, including Jefferson himself, and also Thomas Paine is another, but a well-known saying that says, this is the founding fathers, the government, they said, when the government fears the people, then there's freedom. And when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. The government wrote that at that time. Context. So when you look at all these different things in context, coming from the mouths and the pens of our signers of our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence and our founding father, when you understand and gain an understanding of where they stood and why and how they viewed everything in context of their time and their person and the wisdom that they brought and what was in their mind and what they wanted for this nation and what they were establishing, what they wanted for us hundreds of years later, becomes even far more clear what the Second Amendment means. In fact, HR127 by Sheila Jackson Lee, I made the point in the first video that the bill, they're wanting to outlaw certain kinds of ammunition, okay? And that's including armor-piercing ammunition. We talked about 50 cal in this one, but armor-piercing, even though there's never, ever, ever been a crime that used armor-piercing. Why? Because it's too damn expensive. It would limit the amount of rounds somebody could buy with their dollars to go and pull off a crime. And it's not practical, and it's not needed when going after soft targets, which is where these people attack, especially gun-free zones. People aren't wearing armor. Therefore, knowing that, understanding that, it really begs the question of why she is mentioning very specifically armor-piercing rounds. Unless, of course, there's some idea that, well, there would be need for armor-piercing rounds. And then you'd have to ask where and who would this armor represent? And why would the government want the people to be without it? So please, do you understand? Do you see this entire HR 127, which has the backing of so many people in a government now that is so progressively left and Democrat, with Biden himself creating so many, on his own website, explaining what he wants to do with guns, with Kamala Harris being a complete czar who wants to disarm everybody. They're trying to pack the Supreme Court now. They're looking at that. They've got the House. They've got the Senate. Is every one of them going to vote for it? Of course not. But might some of these pass and others don't? Yes, at least that. And that's what they continue to do. More and more and more, chipping away at it. Where it says in our Constitution, though, shall not be infringed. Folks, there's nothing in this bill that's about safety. The government doesn't need to know how you store your guns or where you store them. Really? Does the government really need a registry of every single gun, the serial number, the color, the make, the model? Do they really need that? Do you realize if you have a gun, one thing that's very, very popular with guns, especially ARs, are people go in, they get them what's called Cerakote. As one way, there's other ways of doing it, but Cerakote, which is a type of, let's call it like a painting, just for easy terms, guns. Sometimes they want to get this in camo or coyote brown or earth brown or whatever. Sometimes you have them, in dollar bills. You change your gun, you change anything you have on that registration, you have to let the government know about it. Why? Why do they need to know that? Knowing where you store a weapon in your home, knowing what color your gun is that really going to keep them from preventing crimes? Do they have some kind of clairvoyance we don't know about? No, people, it has nothing to do with safety. It has everything to do with creating a registry for purpose of confiscation. That is and that's not exaggeration. That really is the only reason they need a registry, is to know who has what and where. And in order to make sure they have it, they institute absurd penalties of felony, $75,000 to $100,000 fine per penalty. $75,000 at the minimum. Psychiatric evaluations, $800 registration? For what? Millions of people are going out committing crimes. This is ridiculous. It is all about taking your guns. So for those who say they're not trying to take your guns, I'm sorry, you are 100% wrong because you really don't know what you're talking about. You are somebody who comes in, it's almost like, I think of the Big Lebowski, when, why can't I remember his name? There's Donnie. Those of you who are fans of Lebowski, you're probably killing me right now. Obviously, there's the dude himself. There's Donnie. Walter. The dude's friend, Walter, where he keeps looking at Donnie. You're out of your effing league, Donnie. Donnie, you're out of your league. You're out of your league, Donnie. Donnie, you're like a child wandering into a dark theater. That's what these people are like. If they tell you they're not trying to take your guns, you can look at them confidently and know that they really, for one, they're wrong. And for two, they're not qualified to give an opinion. They're really not, because they don't know enough information to give a valid opinion. You can't be given opinions when you don't understand what's really going on. That is just arrogance, hubris, and stupidity. That is what that is. And I can think of people by name on my own Facebook page who have come out and told me things like that. Oh, they're not trying to. I'm thinking of many of you, every one of you. I remember who you are. Every one of you falls under that category. So yes, they are. And there's only one reason why they would want to do that. And it's not about safety, y'all. This isn't a fight just about a tool or a toy. This is a fight about so much more than that. It literally is a fight for our constitutional republic. It really is a fight for our liberty. Remember, the government told us a couple hundred years back that when you fear the government, it's tyranny. When the government fears you, it's liberty. And who was it? Is it Franklin, I think? I'd have to double check who the quote's really from. But it's something along the lines of, he who gives up liberty for safety. And it's not the exact quote, I have to look it up. But he who gives up liberty for safety doesn't deserve either. Or he forsakes them both, or something like that. This has never been more pressing and more true than it is today. Scripture says that in the end, people are going to start saying right is wrong and wrong is right. They're coming out now pushing the idea that if you are white, and I've showed this in other videos, if you're white, you are a racist. It doesn't matter. People are coming out saying every single one, no exception, every single white person is racist. If you're a black person but you support whiteness, or you happen to support Trump, you happen to be able to think for yourself, you happen to not follow just what everybody else does because it's what they do, then you are on the scale of whiteness. You're somewhere whiteness, which makes you essentially white, which makes you an enemy. Do you see what they're doing? They're calling Donald Trump a fascist who is trying to bring the greatest economy to our nation, who is trying to give as much independence to everybody, the Platinum Plan for African Americans, setting up opportunity zones, giving opportunities to everybody so that we're not crushed under the government, but we as a populace can actually do things for ourselves and expand and grow. Meanwhile, the new administration coming in is doing all this. I'm not going to say Donald Trump was specifically a friendly president, because he did ban bump stocks and stuff like that, which is ridiculous. But he wasn't sitting here trying to disarm the people. Biden comes in and says, I'm taking down the NRA. Translation, he's taking down everything that stands in his way to do what he wants to do, to take the guns. That's the reason they call it gun control. What the government wants to control. It's not gun safety, it's gun control. And that's what they want. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am so sorry that this went so long, but I'm not sorry, because it's a passion of mine, because it is more than just about guns. So much more than that. So much more. Our country rides on this. So please, if this means anything to you, like, share, and subscribe. That's what really helps grow the channel, and I really want to grow it so badly. I want to reach more people with these kinds of messages. And remember, there is a side that has absolutely lost it. They have given up principle. They have given up standing on integrity. Don't do that. Don't be that. Set that bar higher. Have that standard. Be that example. And please, remember, in everything, be wise. Use discernment. And don't ever, even if they threaten you with bills like this, ever let anybody control you with fear. Because if they do, then you're going to start giving up your rights, you're going to give up your freedoms, and you will have no way of ever getting them back. I love you guys.